All right. Welcome, everyone. My name is Ainsley, and I'm a counselor here at AGI. For those who are joining us for the first time, here's a little bit of background on us. So, Alzheimer Group is a charitable organization that supports families and individuals living with dementia. Our services include activities for people living with dementia, individual and family counseling, support groups for caregivers, and courses, workshops, and webinars. Our educational initiatives are made possible by the generous support of the Lasner Learning Center and the Lindsay Memorial Foundation. Before we begin today, please note that while the chat feature is unavailable, there is a Q&A space for you to ask any questions. You can type your questions at any time throughout the presentation, and we will address them at the end. Today, we are very pleased to welcome Nora Spinks and Christa Haanstra. Nora Spinks is the CEO of Work-Life Harmony Enterprises, an international research and consulting firm dedicated to individual, family, and community well-being. She served as the Chief Executive Officer of the Vanier Institute of the Family for 10 years. She was appointed by the Federal Ministers of Health and Seniors in 2018, chaired the National Seniors Council from 2022 to 2024, and led the WBHI team that developed the BrainFit Habit Tracker mobile application. A recognized thought leader and innovator, Nora has developed federal, provincial, community, and workplace policies and programs focused on employee health and wellness, workplace flexibility, family caregiving, and work-life harmony. She is also known for her role as a convener, trainer, and facilitator, having delivered hundreds of lectures, presentations, and workshops in workplaces, conferences, and community settings across Canada and globally. Nora is joined today by Christa Haanstra, the founder and managing director of 4C Strategy Group, a company dedicated to advancing meaningful change in healthcare by partnering with organizations to ensure lived experience of patients, residents, clients, and caregivers are central to decision-making. In this role, she leads the Working Caregiver Initiative on behalf of the Canadian Centre for Caregiving Excellence. Christa believes that family caregivers are the glue that keeps our healthcare system together. She has partnered with organizations including CCCE, the Ontario Caregiver Organization, and the Change Foundation to create awareness and co-create strategies and approaches to improve the lives of caregivers. Christa is the caregiver to her father, who has late-stage dementia. Through constant service navigation and advocacy, she strives to create a supportive environment that allows him to have a good quality of life. So welcome, Nora and Christa. I will hand the floor over to both of you.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here today. Nora, do you want to say a quick welcome before we jump into the land acknowledgement?
Just great to be here.
Wonderful. So I'm trying to advance the slides. We tried this already. Let's see if this works. There we go. Wonderful. So before we get started, we really want to do a land acknowledgement. So we will begin by acknowledging the Indigenous people of all the lands that we are on today. While we're meeting on this virtual platform, we would like to take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the land which we each call home, where we work and where we care for others. I'm joining today from the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, today known as Guelph, Ontario. We do this to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility in improving relationships between nations and to improving our own understanding of local Indigenous peoples and their cultures. From coast to coast to coast, we acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territory of all the Inuit, Métis, and First Nations people that call this nation home. We honor and respect Indigenous elders past, present, and emerging. We are committed to equity for Indigenous caregivers and care providers and to learning from and working with Indigenous communities. All people living in Canada are treaty people. We are part of a relationship based on the recognition of respect, cooperation, partnership, and Indigenous rights. Please join me in a moment of reflection to acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past and to consider how we can each, in our own way, move forward in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. So thank you for joining us today from wherever you are. We are honored to be here. As you heard already from the introductions, this is a very personal topic for me. So I care for my dad who has dementia and was recently moved into long-term care, and he's had his diagnosis for 10 years. And Nora as well is a caregiver to her mother-in-law who is 105 and has provided palliative care in the past to her mother during COVID, who had dementia. And both of us, for both of us, this is just a small window into our caregiving. This is a regular part of our life. I've had the pleasure of working very closely with Nora over many years to talk about how to combine care and work in the paid labor force as employees, entrepreneurs, and on contract. We really have a big focus. We worked on a project together in order to really look at what the unique circumstances are for people in Canada working and caring, and really understanding what's happening in other jurisdictions, so we can start to think about how to make the employment situation for working caregivers better. Because we know that this is a big problem today, but it's also growing. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the stats in a minute, but right now 1 in 4 Canadians are caregivers, and we know that going forward, that's anticipated to be 1 in 2. So the fact that there are many working caregivers today is only going to grow to be a bigger and bigger demand in the workplace. We are doing 2 webinars with you. So this is the first one, and today is focused on you, the caregiver, and we'll provide some tips about how you can support yourself in your own caregiving role while balancing work as well. And in the next webinar, we'll focus much more on the workplace and what the workplace can do in terms of practices, policies, and programs to make it easier for people to balance work and care. Sorry, just trying to move the slide forward. There we go. Caregiving is hard. If you take one thing away from today, we want to acknowledge that caregiving is not easy for anyone. That it's tiring, it can be complicated, it's unrelenting, it grows over time. I often talk about the fact that when you're in a caregiving situation, it might start, like I think about my own situation 10 years ago with my dad, it looks very different than it did today. And I can't even go back and tell you those exact moments when things started, the burden started to get heavier and heavier. So it is unrelenting, it's exhausting, it's often thankless. People feel very invisible in a caregiving role. And you're not alone in that. All of us on the call today are caregivers, but there's many caregivers in Canada who are dealing with this. And yet it's often not until we hit a point of burnout that we recognize that we are in this with many other people, because we don't even self-identify often as caregivers until we hit a point of burnout. On the flip side, and I certainly experienced this in my own caregiving journey, it can also be rewarding, fulfilling, meaningful. I feel like I look at the relationship I have with my dad now. It is not what I expected it to be in his retirement and at this stage of life, but there's lots of things that I'm still learning from him as he is living through his illness and trying to live as well as he can through his illness. So there are pieces, there are beautiful parts of this journey that when we look for them, we can see them and feel them. We also know that caregiving can be even more complicated when you have things like English isn't your first language, which is the case for my dad as well, and where he has lost all of his language and still has some of his native language. But it makes it difficult to find care that can support him in that. Multi-generational living is also an issue. That's also a trend in our family, where my parents live with one of my siblings until my dad moved out, and my mom still lives with him. Long distance caring complicates things even more. And I think sometimes people think long distance caring is easier. I think it's not easier. It's just different in many ways. There are young caregivers, there are early career caregivers. I'm going to talk a little bit about that later. Solo caregiving, there's some people who are only children. There's others who have siblings who you can care with, but often caregiving can bring to the fore conflicts in families, and sometimes you don't always see eye to eye, and that navigating those relationships can be very difficult, especially if you have large families that maybe have you have ex-spouses or split families where complications can really rear their head through the caregiving experience. So One of the things I like to talk about is caregivers want and need to work, and there's a lot of reasons for that. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Caregiving is, as we talked about, exhausting. It can be unrelenting. Work can often be a form of respite for caregivers, and we hear that a lot. This idea that you can go into a place where you don't have to think about caregiving, where you have an identity beyond being a caregiver, which is really important for people. So it can energize you. It can provide rest and rejuvenation. It gives you a different purpose and identity. And because we know that as caregiving goes on, it can come to an end. And so being able to maintain a different identity amongst your caregiving can be really important as you live through grief as well. It gives you a sense of purpose. It gives you connection and social connection, because it can be very isolating when you're a caregiver being at home alone. Oh, thank you. And so it's very helpful to have those opportunities to meet with other people and to talk about other topics that are really important. We also know that it's really, really critical in terms of financially being able to work. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the stats around working caregivers and the impact on them. But we know that the most recent data shows that caregivers can pay up to $1,000 out of pocket each month for caregiving responsibilities and for supporting the person they're caring for. And so people do need to work. And so they want to be able to figure out how to balance it. And that's what we're going to talk a little bit more about today. Obviously, benefits related to work can also be important for mental health counseling or for other services that you might need as a result of being a caregiver. The other thing that you get when you're at work is you get to feel like you're making progress. Sometimes caregiving can feel like you're spinning your wheels, but when you're at work, you can work towards a goal. You get recognition, there's accomplishment, there's structure, there's routine, there's predictability, and you can feel less alone. Because one of the things that we often hear about is that caregivers do feel alone until they realize that they are one of many people in this world who are balancing work and care. So, I know I've already talked about one particular key message we want you to learn through this webinar, which is caregiving is hard. So I'm just trying to flip the slide ahead one. Nora, if you're there, can you flip it ahead to the next slide? I'm having trouble with the remote access at the moment. There we go. Thank you so much. So the other message we want you to leave with today is that you are not alone. It's really important to understand that you are not the only one in this situation. So let me give you a little bit of an overview of the stats of working caregivers. There are over 6 million Canadians today balancing work and care responsibilities. As I mentioned already, we have 1 in 4 people who are caregivers today. We expect that to be 1 in 2. So that means the rates of working caregivers is also going to go up. 62% of caregivers are still employed in some way. So full-time, self-employed, part-time, they are still employed. Of caregivers who are aged 25 to 44, 68% of them are still working full-time. So that is a huge balancing act, especially when we know that caregivers on average give up to 30 hours a week caring for the person that needs help. And so that's almost like an entire new second job. And so there are both sides of the coin here. Caregivers want to work and need to work, but it's also hard to do that. So 15% reduce their work hours, 10% turn down new opportunities, which means that they're not being able to advance in their own career or in making more money. 26% take a leave of absence. 10% delay retirement because of the cost of caregiving, and 6% find another job to manage the responsibilities. So to find that balance, which can be very difficult. I just want to highlight that we often think about caregivers who are maybe caring for an older adult, especially those who may have Alzheimer's. We know that Alzheimer's can hit younger, but on average, it hits people who are older. But the truth is there are early career caregivers. So 1 in 4 caregivers is a millennial. More than half of all millennial caregivers are sole caregivers, so they're doing it on their own. Millennial caregivers are most likely of any generation to be employed while performing their caregiving duties. So they're the ones that are definitely balancing the two because they're younger. And on average, millennial caregivers spend 21 to 24 hours a week providing care while also working an average of 37 hours a week. So we often, when we're talking to workplaces, I've heard some of them say to me, well, our employees skew younger in age, so this isn't an issue. And we really need to stop them there and remind them that, in fact, there are a growing number of early career caregivers who also need consideration. Nora, I'm going to ask you to move the slide ahead again. Thank you. You don't have to do this alone. So you're not alone, and there are ways to ask for help. There are resources and supports. Different provinces have caregiving organizations, and there are a number of them in Quebec that you can access supports through. You can get mental health support or counseling support. And if you're employed, hopefully have it somewhat covered by your employer. And you need to constantly assess your own needs because they change over time. As I talked about, your trajectory of caregiving can look very different over a period of years. And it's often not until you've got added responsibilities for a number of months that you realize, oh, this is taking more and more time and I need more and more support. And so what works today might not work tomorrow. And just to be really honest about how you're progressing through what you need and what kind of support you can use. And we will talk a lot about what that can look like in the workplace, some of it today, but also from the workplace perspective. We'll talk about it at the next webinar. So finally, before I turn it over to Nora, we will talk a lot more about how to seek out support at work through your coworkers, through your supervisors, looking at what the policies, programs, and practices are within your organization that can support you. Sometimes you don't really think about what you need as a caregiver in terms of the types of benefits you might have in an organization until you need them. So it's good to go back and look. There are paid leave for caregivers in certain circumstances. There's also different kinds of benefits to cover off out-of-pocket expenses. So it's always worth going back and looking at that. Talking to HR or occupational health. The EAP programs that are out there right now, the employee assistance programs, are growing in their understanding of the needs for caregivers and often have specific resources for supporting caregivers, including navigation support. You can turn to your industry or professional associations. Looking at overall public policies and government policies, as I mentioned earlier, there are caregiver leaves that are available. They have very specific criteria to meet, but they do exist. And under the Human Rights Code, there's a duty to accommodate for family status. And so that's also an option for getting support at work. So I'm going to stop there and turn it over to Nora, who's going to talk a lot more about the different things that you can focus on and how to support yourself.
Thank you, Christa. That was amazing overview. Really do appreciate it. I'm going to be talking specifically about you, about what you need, what works best for you today, tomorrow, the next day. I'm going to be focusing on sharing a number of tips and strategies, approaches, ideas that we've collected in conversations with caregivers and that we have tested and have found that are effective. Some of what I'm going to share with you will only be reinforcing what you're already doing, things that will validate that what you're doing, you're on the right path. Others may be new or a new twist on something you might already be doing. Not all of them will fit you at this particular moment, but some may, you may apply down the road. So just keep that in mind as we sort of go through a number of these suggestions. And again, if we have any questions and you want further clarification, we can look at that a little bit later with our time together. So I want to talk first about self-awareness. And as Christa mentioned, the more you understand who you are, what your needs are, what your strengths are, what your interests are, where you need help, where you could benefit from help. It's really important that you focus on you as much as you focus on the person that you are providing care for. And just picking up on the concept of you're not alone and you don't have to do this alone. One of the elements of self-awareness is cutting yourself some slack. We are always talking to ourselves. Our self-talk as caregivers can sometimes be more negative than positive. And so just being aware of when you need to recalibrate that self-talk and to support yourself as much as possible can be very helpful. The other thing to think about is if we control the things that are within our control, we can more effectively manage the things that are out of our control. And this helps us keep our perspective. It helps us stay centered. It helps us from falling into that burnout state. And it gives us a sort of frame for us to be able to say, you know, there's a number of things that we can't control and that's okay. And those things that we can't control, we may be able to effectively manage with the help of others, with the support of our community, but control the things that are within your control. So what are those things? When you're a caregiver, it often feels like nothing's in your control. We often hear caregivers talk about how they can control their attitude, that this is a gift. This isn't just a burden. This is an opportunity to demonstrate love, care, support, to give back, to give to somebody that's important in your life. You also control your perspective, whether you see the glass as half empty or half full, how you approach a situation or a circumstance as a learning opportunity, as an opportunity to grow, as an opportunity to expand your networks. Your approach is something you control, and your reactions, how you react to situations. So I want to just spend a little bit of time on perspective, because perspective is everything. And when you approach the complexity of caregiving with a positive perspective and look at it as an opportunity to develop strengths and capabilities and develop new skills, then it changes the way in which you experience every day. And I'll just leave you with this little thought that stressed is desserts spelled backwards. And if we just begin to think about what it is that we're gaining and we're doing and we're learning from caregiving, then on the days that are really hard and you're exhausted and you're completely depleted, you can remember that there are all of these other benefits to being a caregiver. And one of those is being able to meet other caregivers and to learn from them. I'm going to give you a couple of very specific things with respect to work. And that is how we manage our transitions from home to work and work to home. We know that these are really important periods of time that allow us to shed the persona that we had at home or at work and transition to the other. We know that paying attention and consciously approaching those transitions make it easier for us to make the adjustment. So if you go from 100% caregiver, take advantage of the commute time, whether that's walking to another floor of your home, around the corner, to an office place, into your vehicle, wherever work happens to take place. And whether it's 5 minutes or an hour, just use that time consciously to transition out of home to work. Some people find that creating that sort of boundary around one and the other makes it easier to say, okay, now I'm an employee and now I'm a caregiver. For others, it's less easy to create those boundaries, and it's more permeable, where you're both at work and at home, blending work and your caregiving responsibilities. So there is no right answer to this, but just know that you have these moments in time in your day that you can use these transition periods from home to work and work to home to help prevent that burnout from occurring. It's also a really good time to give yourself a little bit of break, whether it's listening to a book on tape or just peace and quiet or just watching the world go by, smiling at other people. You know, transitions are, your commute time can be extremely valuable. And in fact, we did a piece of research after COVID, and we asked people, what is it that you are looking forward to in returning to work? And the number one answer was their commute. And we always thought that that would be the last thing that they would want to focus on. But in fact, it was those moments of reflection and personal time and that social connection with people that you bump into either regularly or for the first time while you're commuting. You know, I talked a little bit about cutting yourself some slack. You know, this is one of those things where we want everything to be perfect. We want our work to be perfect. We want our caregiving to be perfect. We want to do everything right. But what we know in terms of attitude and perspective, if we shoot for excellence instead of perfection, then we're less likely to fall into burnout. And there's a little saying we have at our office called GEPO. We stole this from Ontario Hydro from years ago, where they had a concept where anybody at any time could call GEPO, good enough, press on. And it allows people to feel good about the work you're doing, both at home and at work, but it doesn't have to be perfect. Somebody from a recent workshop sent me a little video from, I don't know whether it was Instagram or Facebook or one of those, and it was a woman watching a clip about how to fold underwear perfectly. And she just looked at the clip and then had her basket full of clean laundry and just dumped it into the drawer as it came out of the laundry basket. It's good enough. It's clean. It's excellent. It doesn't have to be perfect. When we think about how we plan and prepare for the next day, the next week, the next period, the next plateau for caregiving, is to remember to focus on what we call the wind chill and not just the temperature. You know, when we hear the weather forecast in the winter, it's wind chill. In the summer, it's the humidex or the feels like number. If the temperature is going to be 0, but the wind chill is -20, if we only dress for 0 instead of what it feels like at -20, the wind chill, we're going to be uncomfortable. So plan and prepare for the wind chill. So if you're going to a doctor's appointment and you're taking mom or dad to their appointment and it's scheduled for 2 o'clock, plan for the delays, plan for the wind chill. You know, the likelihood is it's going to be 2:30, 3 o'clock. Plan for that. I was taking somebody to an appointment recently, and somebody was fretting about, you know, the delay and the lateness. And somebody who else was in the waiting room turned to them and said, I've been coming here for a long time. We've been getting cancer care here for my mom for a long time. We plan on being here all afternoon. And if we happen to get out early, it's a treat and we go for ice cream. Perspective flip, planning and preparing for the wind chill. Breathe. One of the things we know as we get busier and busier and we feel more and more overwhelmed or overloaded is that we tend to start breathing from the very top of our lungs. And as we do that, it increases stress, not decreasing stress. So there's 3 quick breathing techniques that I'm going to give you that you can apply when you're in the bathroom by yourself, in an elevator, in your car, at a moment, when you're boiling the kettle, when you're emptying the bedpan, whatever it is, you can use these breathing moments. The first one is a stress breath, and it allows you to bring your whole nervous system back down to calm. And it's taken from watching infants self-regulate. And that is the fast breaths in and then a slow breath out. And you can practice that and you can learn how to do that. And it brings your stress level down, whether you're on hold waiting for test results, or you're in traffic and you're going to be late, or you're just in an elevator and you're feeling your stress level rise. In, out. Another one is the circle breathing, which many people learn through meditation or through yoga, which is 4 breaths in, hold for 8, out for 4. So in for 4, hold for 8, and blow out for 4. Another is just when you're relaxing, just a full-on blow out your air, whatever air you currently have. And it brings your heart rate and your stress rate down. So 3 quick breathing techniques for you when things are feeling a little out of control. Personal policies are things that you can put in place that help you say no to things, to create boundaries, to protect yourself, your time, your energy, and put you back on the path for well-being. So a personal policy is basically a statement, a belief that you can share with others. So if somebody asks you to help out with something, or asks you to bring something to a potluck, you can say, I have a personal policy that as a caregiver, I'm at home for dinner every night of the week, except on Sundays. It's a comfortable way to say, no, I'm unavailable, without having to say, no, I'm not available. I have a personal policy that I'm home with my loved one a minimum of 6 days a week. I've already been out once this week. Thanks for the invitation. I won't be able to attend, period. Another one is to have a personal policy that you care for yourself first. And you can share this personal policy with people around you. In the workplace, this is very, very effective. I had a client once a CEO who had a personal policy that he would have breakfast with his family every 3 mornings a week, full on sit at the table, breakfast with his family. And everybody knew that. So they would look at the CEO's calendar and see that he was already out for 2 mornings that week. So they wouldn't even bother to ask if he would be able to attend another meeting early or attend a breakfast event. Everybody knew 2 mornings out, 3 mornings in, period, personal policy, non-negotiable, no discussion. And then the people around him started to support his personal policy of being home, and others created their own. I have a personal policy that I'm home every Friday evening. I don't travel on weekends. Whatever it happens to be that works for you, framing it as a personal policy helps you communicate that with others and helps others help you. Another one is no is a complete sentence. When somebody asks you to do something extra at home or at work, you can just simply say, no, not available today, thank you. No, thanks for asking. No, it's not possible, thank you. End of story. No need for excuses, no need for apologies, no need for explanations. No, is a complete sentence. And just saying no and thanking people for asking is enough. And you can say no to anything that doesn't bring you joy or energy or comfort. It's totally okay to pass on anything. If it's something that you love and want to get back to afterwards when your caregiving demands are less or change, that's totally okay to change your personal policies as you go. Micro vacations. As a caregiver, it's often very, very difficult to find time to take a full vacation, to go away, to have time to yourself. But what we now know from the brain science is micro vacations can be as restorative as hanging out on a beach or exploring a new city or having a new adventure. Micro vacations happen in your brain. They're images either that you create or that memories that you bring back. And so if you can't take a vacation, imagining yourself on the beach, smelling the ocean, listening to the waves, feeling the sand, listening to the birds. You can do that while you're in the bathroom, while you're in your car, while you're in an elevator. Your brain will take all of that as if it were true. So use micro vacations as a way of replenishing, rejuvenating, re-energizing yourself throughout the day, throughout the week, throughout the month. Taking real breaks are important as well, but when you don't have time, micro vacations can be very effective. We talked a little bit about cutting yourself some slack. Really being kind to yourself will help you get through your caregiving journey with more energy and more self-compassion, and therefore your ability to give care and be compassionate and be patient with others will be much easier if you are kind to yourself. So remind yourself on a regular basis that you're doing the best that you can with the tools, the resources, the knowledge, the skills, the energy, the time that you have available. You're doing the best you can. Don't second guess yourself. What we often say is don't should on yourself. I should be doing this. I should be doing that. I should be more tolerant. I should do more time. I should be more. Stop shoulding on yourself. Really pay very close attention to when you're feeling or you're second guessing or you're being judgmental about what you're doing or how you're doing it. Be kind to yourself. Treat yourself the way you would treat others. Give yourself regular pep talks. Our brains are constantly engaged in self-talk. Oftentimes it's critical, it's judgmental, it's negative. Take control over that self-talk. Excuse me. Make sure that you're being honest and clear and kind and thoughtful and generous to yourself the way you would be to others. We often hear people talk about guilt when it's about care and work. They feel guilty when they're at work that they're not at home. When they're at home, they're feeling guilty that they're not doing more for work. Just abandoned guilt. Guilt is one of those things that is completely within our control. Remember, control the things that are within your control so you can effectively manage that which is out of your control. Guilt you control. Guilt occurs when there is a disconnect between a belief and an action. So to get rid of the guilt, you either change or adjust the belief or the action, or sometimes a little bit of both. And by doing that, guilt is eliminated. So for example, if you believe that a good daughter is present and taking care of her mom 24/7, 365 days of the year, nobody could do it better, and you go off to work for 35 hours a week, you're going to feel guilty. All you have to do is change the belief slightly, and you'll be able to eliminate the guilt. So instead of saying that you're there 24/7 and that you're the one that's providing the care full time, shift that belief that mom deserves 24-hour, 365-day care by somebody who looks after their needs and has their best interests at heart. You'll do that when you're present, and when you're not, you'll find somebody who will. Now, all of a sudden, you're going off to work, no more guilt. You can also change the action. So if you believe that a caregiver offers nutritional, home-cooked meals 3 times a day, 7 days a week, and you have takeout twice a week, you're going to feel guilty. You can shift the action, and you can shift the belief. So in this case, instead of saying nutritional home-cooked meal 3 times a week, shift that to a nutritious meal, at least a nutritious meal 3 times a day, 7 days a week, but that you can get nutritious meals from other sources than home cooking. So you can provide nutritious meals, and some of that's takeout, and some of that's heat and serve, and some of that's frozen, and some of that's home cooked, fresh. It's all okay. Belief and action go into alignment. Guilt goes away. Staying connected to friends, family, community is critically important to ensure that burnout is not going to creep into your life. Make sure that you spend time connecting. And that could be a simple phone call, a text, an email, an appointment. You can also double up on things. So if you have an errand to run, ask somebody to go with you. If you want to meet a friend for coffee, combine that with self-care. Instead of meeting for coffee, meet for a pedicure. By doubling up on some of these things, you can accomplish staying connected and feeling like you still have a circle of support around you, and fulfilling all your duties, responsibilities, and obligations to yourself and to your loved ones at the same time. So doubling up, piggybacking, all really important. Christa talked a little bit about the importance of recognizing and celebrating, and how a lot of people get that from work. Done a great job, well done, thank you. We don't always get that as caregivers. So this is where you get to do this yourself. Use that self-talk to recognize, celebrate, appreciate. I got through this hour. I got through a day. I learned a new skill today. I learned something. Mom smiled today. Dad giggled today. I met someone at the program today. Create these little moments of self-recognition, celebration, and appreciation for everything that you do for others throughout the day. There's something powerful about done lists. Everybody's got a to-do list. You've got a to-do list on the fridge. You've got a to-do list on your phone. There's lots and lots to do. But what we now know about the brain is that it's equally important and powerful to review your done lists. So you might not have got the laundry done today. You might not have got that report done today, but you did get done a whole lot of other things. You made somebody smile. You changed the sheets. You put a load of laundry in. You managed to put a load of laundry away. Done lists are equally important as to-do lists. And part of recognizing, celebrating, and appreciating is paying attention to those mindful moments. Just being aware of being in the moment and recognizing that, hey, I'm a caregiver and I'm doing a great job. I'm doing the best job that I can with the resource and the tools and the knowledge that I have. I'm reaching out and asking for and accepting help when it's needed. And I'm doing great. And that kind of mindful moments, they may be fleeting, but they start to add up over time. I'm going to leave you with one quick story, and then we're going to open up for questions, and then we're going to come back and Christa and I will wrap up. But this is a story of a car race. So imagine one of these car races where the cars go round and round in laps. There were two drivers. Both drivers were in a winning position. Both drivers had a decision to make near the end of the race. Both of them required maintenance of their vehicle. One decided to go into the pit and rely on their pit crew to prepare their vehicle so that they could complete the race and potentially win. And the second one decided, no, I'm going to push it through. I don't need to stop. I just need to get across the finish line first. Both had a decision to make. Both made very different decisions. Now, the one that didn't take the pit stop actually did win the race, got across the finish line first. But right after the finish line, the engine seized, the car stopped, there was nothing left in the tank. He was depleted. He couldn't do a victory lap. He had no way of celebrating. There was nothing he could do. The other driver who took the pit stop came in a very close second, and she was able to get around a victory lap. She went back to her pit crew. She had a celebration. They welcomed the fact that they came in second. They celebrated it. They appreciated each other, and their vehicle was ready for the next race. The first driver had to get a whole new car. There was nothing left that they could do to repair. The pit crew didn't feel valued or appreciated. Which do you want to be? Do you want to be push it through on your own solo, or do you want to rely on your pit crew and do you want to run the race and be available to run it again the next day? So we're going to take a little bit of break to answer some of your questions, and then we're going to come right back and finish up. So Ainsley, do you have some questions for us?
Yes, first I just want to thank you both very much. That was extremely informative. I do want to let everybody here know that we will be joined by both Nora and Christa again in September, on September 11th for a webinar called Work and Care. Did either of you want to speak to that quickly?
Christa, do you want to?
Sure. So what we talked about at the very beginning is we'll talk a little bit more about the opportunities in the workplace, using some examples of what is already happening, and then how people can actually leverage the type of thing that is happening within their employer. Although in some cases it's not explicit, and so we'll also talk about how you could approach your HR department or OC Health department to get support if there isn't an explicit commitment to supporting working caregivers. And that's the work that Nora and I have been working through the Canadian Centre for Caregiving Excellence, which is a program of the Israeli Foundation. We've been looking at the workplace, and there's a report that we put out earlier this year based on some roundtables that we did last year. So happy to circulate that to the attendees today, and then we'll speak to it in more detail at the next webinar.
Incredible. Okay, thank you. And I saw, Christa, you shared with me some resources that I can go in and share with the attendees today too. So we will definitely send that to all of you. We didn't have any other questions. Like I said, it was actually very informative. So thank you both, Nora and Christa, again. Were there any kind of final comments that you wanted to share with attendees?
Yeah, well, thanks for hosting this webinar. You know, everything we talked about today, you can apply in your home, you can apply in the workplace. You know, one of the things that the closing thought we want to leave with you is that it's not the strongest species that shall survive, but that which has the greatest capacity to adapt. And it's one of the things that we've learned as caregivers, and we've learned in the literature, and we've learned by evaluating and assessing workplace policies, practices, benefits, is that those individuals and organizations that adapt, that adjust, that are flexible and agile are the ones that will thrive, the people that will flourish, the people that will be able to maintain a quality of life at home and at work as caregivers, as long-term caregivers, when you're looking after a loved one who is living with dementia. So remind yourself that it's about adaptation, it's about learning, it's about adjusting. You're not alone. You don't have to do it alone. You don't have to be an expert. Perfection is not something we should be striving for, but rather excellence. Be kind to yourself. Let others be kind to you. It's been a pleasure hanging out with you for this brief time this morning. Thank you so very much for having us. Thank you to the Alzheimer's group. Thank you, Ainsley and Molly, who was behind the scenes. And thank you to all of you who gave us a little bit of your time today. And I hope you found it at least a pause. It may have been affirmation or validation for all the things you're doing well. There may be a nugget or two that you can take away and try on your own. And we're very much looking forward to seeing you all in September to focus on what can you do on the work side of the work and care equation.
Thank you so much. Have a lovely afternoon to both of you and to all the participants here today. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks. Take care. Bye.